Hi, it's Locke here, and today I'm responding to a type of email that carries a lot of questions over an exchange, and I want to look at some of the misconceptions that certain groups have about the Karistus. So there are those of us who feel very much at home, who feel very attuned and even activated by Dante's videos. But then there are other groups, instead of saying but, I should say and there are other groups who know about the Karistus through hearsay, through someone else's words about them. Okay, and so this is a conversation with a member of one of those other groups who, for one reason or another, feel that I can shed some further information on their questions. Okay, now I've said before, and I will continue to say, I am not an insider of the Karistus. I am just like you. I have listened, I have learned, I have felt at home, I have felt activated. Okay, but I have not been brought any closer to their operations. So I'm speaking as a member of the public. So the first question, and it's a question I commonly see, is that the Karistus want to be seen as angels. And my response is, they prefer not to be seen at all. However, they are beings who are identified as angels. They are the ones who historically, biblically, have been known as the Grigori, the Watchers. I want to take a moment to point out that they are not fallen angels. Dante even made a video about this. It's a mistranslation. Fallen. English is such a non-poetic, a non-mythic language. It's based in, it's based in German. It's related to the German language with a lot of Latin thrown in. So it's very rational based, intellectual based, but for speaking about nuanced, delicate, ethereal topics that are beyond the scope of our education, of our programming, it has a real poverty of application. So a lot of deep and rich meanings that are articulated in other languages get translated very, very poorly into English so that it appears surface or easily dismissible. And that's a very sad thing, particularly for people who are well educated, I'm sorry to say, for people who give little appreciation to the arts, to music, to fine art, painting, expression of the soul. Really, that's what the arts are, expressions of the soul. So people who dismiss the arts generally dismiss that which is soulful. Okay, now getting back to the question about Karistus and angels, they just are. They just are their own race, and we've been advised, and it's also confirmed in many mythic and other sources, that not all of them have wings. There are many types of Karistus, but the ones that tend to interact, and particularly, I guess, the high-profile ones, the ones that have more of a larger mission. So I'm not talking now about like personal angels or guardian angels, but the ones that have missions to guide the development of a civilization or the development of a people. So the Karistus operate at many levels, and not all levels have wings. Okay, so going on. Okay, so the next turn of the conversation goes towards the Karistus want to be worshipped, or they don't want to be worshipped. Okay, so let's talk about worship and the Karistus. Okay, no, there is no cult of the Karistus as such. There never has been a cult of angels, as far as my research goes anyway. And the Karistus are always seen as an entourage, an accompaniment to a deity or to God. They themselves do not want to be worshipped, not in their Karistus form. Okay. Now the next one. They claim ownership of our planet. This is such a misconception that other groups have about the Karistus. No. They do not claim to own this planet. They guard it. They have been assigned to guard this planet. They protect it. They steward over it. They guide it. It is their responsibility. This planet has been allocated to their responsibility. Note, they haven't claimed it by conquering. They have been allocated. They have been tasked with a peacekeeping mission on this planet. They didn't choose it, and I get a sense they don't particularly want it. They have been here for thousands and thousands of years, so they don't want to own it. Now, having said that, I get a sense of where this confusion of ownership might come from. You need to think in military terms, because the Karistus tend to be a military-based race. In fact, the Roman army, including the dress, the outfitting, has echoes back to the Karistus. So, think again, peacekeeping forces. Okay, when a peacekeeping force comes into a region, there will be a leader who takes control of the situation, a leader who works with the political heads, who may even take their place for a while until the situation stabilizes, and then they would leave. Okay, so this is really important to understand. The Karistus do not want to be on this planet. They have been asked by a higher power to be. They honor that. They have sustained incredible losses over these years, over these millennia, and it's created a lot of heartbreak back in their own realm. So no, it's totally unwise and untrue to consider the Karistus as owners of this planet. Okay, so I hope I've made that clear. The exchange goes on. When the Karistus show up, do they manifest as angels? No, they don't. No, they don't. Not in this particular day and age. That's not their intent. That's not their intent. If they are sighted in their winged form, it's usually an accident, usually captured on technology, camera. And cameras see things that the human eye can't. So for a lot of races, it's getting hard to evade human technology. Well, human technology, just technology, not really sure where it comes from. But that's not their intention, is to strut around in angelic form. When people do see them, when they are visible, it's most often as crafts in the sky, or underwater, or somewhere in between. However, there are Karistus among us as normal humans. They look like normal humans. And these can be incarnates, so the Karistus soul in a human-born body with human frailties. I was almost going to qualify that, but no, the powers that a human body carries when it carries a Karistus incarnate tends to be technologically based. So it's not genetically based, naturally genetically based, as we understand naturally. Okay, and there's also hybrids. So these may be DNA tweaked, genetically tweaked bodies. So generally speaking, you won't observe if there is a Karistus among you. Now remember, there's that Bible quote in, I think it's Hebrews 13:2. Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing so, some people have shown hospitality to angels without knowing it. Okay, so you never know who is around you. Generally speaking, my experience, the Karistus incarnates and the hybrids have quite high charisma, quite high caliber moral qualities. Now, having said that, many of these, particularly more for the hybrids than the incarnates. So hybrids, and all races that are embedded here have both incarnates and hybrids. It's not only the Karistus. So the hybrids are the ones that have blended DNA, and generally, I mean, okay, back up. The DNA blending does not have to occur in this particular lifetime. It can be ancestral. Okay, so, and it doesn't have to occur via abductions. And again, I'll say it doesn't have to occur to the current hybrid body. It can have occurred back throughout the body's genetic ancestry. And we know those of us who follow Dante's videos, we know that the Karistus have spread their genetics throughout many lands, throughout many peoples, as have the other races that are embedded here. Okay. Now, hybrids, you can consider them as sleeper agents. And at times they get activated. And I suspect that this is the purpose of Dante's videos, is the activation of their hybrids. Okay, to lift the game, to take a stand. So all of these people who refer to themselves as starseeds, maybe even as walk-ins, they may actually be hybrids of a higher race, like the Karistus, the ones who serve the deities who make worlds, who made this one. So yeah, hybrids are the activated ones. So getting back to the question, when the Karistus show up, are they in their angelic form? No. Unless it's by accident, and it's very rare, you will feel them, you will sense them, part of you will know them, your logical mind will not. Does that make sense? Probably not. Okay, next turn of the conversation. The Karistus relationship with the Galactic Federation. Dante has never, to my knowledge, mentioned anything about the Galactic Federation. He has never mentioned any politicking beyond the narrative of the deity, which is a goddess, beyond the narrative of the Anunnaki, who are partners in stewarding this planet. They have a different role. The Anunnaki are not peacekeepers. They are more like your bureaucrats, your engineers, your technicians, the social engineers. Okay, that does not fall under the Karistus purview. The role of the Karistus is basically to push back against the influence of the malevolent races that want to exploit humanity or possibly destroy humanity. So Karistus' role, as far as I've been able to understand it, is to push back malevolent influences to allow humanity to develop according to its own momentum, to its own destiny. Okay, so that is the soul level, soul as in only, S-O-L-E, the soul level of politics that Dante has ever mentioned. He does talk about allies coming to assist, and this is usually in off-world battles. So around the world, on this world, there are dramas, there are operations in progress to control humanity. There are operations in progress on this planet to free or loosen up that control. Okay, so the Earth itself is a battleground, but there are also off-world, what you see in the skies. Okay, you will see occasional skirmishes. And then there is that, what might be called inner space, which is outer space, but only up to the asteroid belt. Okay, so that's kind of considered the backyard of Earth. Okay, so there are a lot of craft, a lot of operations going on in that field as well. And for those of you who have ever delved into the secret space program I think James Rink is one of the biggest spokesmen of that. So follow up either of those two terms, secret space program or James Rink, R-I-N-K, to get yourself, to make yourself become aware of what they're up to. But I was going to go off on a tangent about the secret space program, but I won't, not in this video, video. All right, so, and in that inner space, in that backyard area of space, there's a lot of allies that come to the assistance of the Karistus. And look, honestly, again, think of a peacekeeping situation here on Earth, some of the more mundane operations that we read about. Okay, you have... I know the United States would like to see itself as the peacekeeper of the world, and I think a lot of us are a little bit leery of that claim at this point in time. It might have been truer earlier, but now it's kind of looking quite dubious. But it's not just one nation. Okay, there's a nation that leads, but then other nations may also offer troops or equipment or technology or even expertise that is lacking with the main race that's leading the peacekeeping. Okay, so the allyship can come in many forms and probably way beyond the ones that I've been able to discern. So even though there are other allies, okay, the Karistus are still the main peacekeepers over here. And none of his videos have ever mentioned the term Galactic Federation. And I'm just pondering, I'm feeling into the Galactic Federation and the Karistus, and it strikes me, whether correctly or incorrectly, I have no idea, but it strikes me that the Karistus are a moral, highly moral society group. And yes, they may need to do bad things, but it is in service to a higher outcome. So sometimes, as Dante has said himself many times, people, they need to do bad things in order to prevent worse things. Okay, so, and I'm sure every ex-military person has a fine appreciation of that dilemma. Okay, sometimes you have to do bad things in order to prevent worse things. And even many non-military people would be quite aware of some ethical dilemmas that life loves to throw. And the next turn of the conversation, okay, the person just touches base and writes that, well, I assume your knowledge comes from Dante's videos, correct? All right, I'll read what I've written here, and then I'll talk a little bit, I'll expand it. Okay, what Dante has offered over 14 years of video revelations can be considered a modern version of an ancient mystery school. His information isn't laid out like a course for intellectual study. His intention is to find his people, and possibly to activate them, not to disclose anything to the masses. This is why so many people find his videos frustrating and annoying to watch. It makes no sense. It's a phrase we often hear. His people, the Karistus hybrids, are being activated by these videos, gently, over time. And I'm one. In my decades of personal and spiritual development, I have found it to be a spiritual process without equal. It's not a shallow experience, but a life-altering one. We learn, we know who we are, where we belong, without any doubt whatsoever. But don't make the mistake of thinking that we are being brainwashed. On the contrary, critical thinking is one of Dante's biggest sticks that he hits us with. He has no tolerance for stupidity. Okay. Dante does not control his followers. Dante does not seek or wish to control those who watch his videos. He's a very much take it or leave it kind of guy. Believe it or not, he's not concerned. But it must be said that once you choose to commit, you are held to it. You are held to it. And this is no different at all to what was required in the biblical days. What we have lost in this society, and this is me going off on a tangent, this is not even mentioned in the emails, but what we have lost is loyalty and commitment in this day and age. With the internet, with the pace of life, we skim over the surface. There is so much information thrown at us. It is really hard. It is really challenging for us as thinking living beings to consume to any depth. So we are surface dwellers. That's the wrong connotation, takes it in a different direction, but we don't go deep. And that lack of depth is so much to our detriment because we are swayed so easily. We are more controlled when we don't go deep, when we don't put down deep roots into any belief, into any kind of meaning of life. When life becomes meaningless because we have no roots to anchor us to any purpose. So when we are floating, we are like the clouds in the sky that can be directed one way can be directed another way. Okay, that we're just so much more easily controlled. So even as I'm talking, the idea is coming to me that the purpose of Dante's videos is to activate his hybrids, to put down a root, an anchor to a knowing of who we are, of why we're here, of what we are here to do. And once we have put down those roots, nothing sways us. Okay? And that is so different from being brainwashed by a cult. A cult wants you to be boxed in, wants you to conform, wants you to limit yourself to a set way of thinking. And you are not allowed to question what's outside that set way of thinking. It is punishment-based. It is fear-based. Whereas Dante's teachings, nothing like that. Even as I speak, I see a contradiction that is slamming into my mind. Dante hates traitors with a passion. But for those hybrids, those Karistus hybrids that have not given him a promise, that have not Dante, remember Dante is 𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿. Dante is the human name for the Karistus being. One of the four brothers who have been tasked to oversee humanity's destiny. But for those who watch the videos, if they have not made any promise of loyalty to the Karistus and to 𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿, they are free to question, they're free to doubt, they're free to test. There is no repercussion. So it's like they have the freedom to explore philosophically, ethically, same thing, scientifically, rationally. You can come at the Karistus knowing from many different angles: politics, history, science, UFOs, hidden history. And there's no repercussions because many feel anchored. It's like a coming home. It's like a coming home sense that is so deep. It's a relief. It's a sigh of the soul. Whereas in many cults, there tends to be that seed of doubt that because the costs are so high, the personal costs of loss of liberty, loss of freedom of thinking, those costs are so high that there's always that niggle of doubt that, you hope you've chosen correctly. There isn't that with a Karistus, with their teachings. Now, I do apologize to those who are relatively new to the discovery of the Karistus, because the body of teachings is temporarily unavailable. At least I'm hoping it's temporarily. I'm hoping by the end of 2022, that moving into 2023 and beyond, that those teachings will become available again. But for now, they have been shut down. And that's because, for those of you who may not know, is that this is a prescribed war period between the races that control this planet. And this is a fractal situation that is played out in many levels of I was going to say reality, but many levels of existence. It's across the solar system, it's across the galaxies, this dynamic. So getting back down here to Earth, okay, since 2017 up to the end of 2022, this is a prescribed period of conflict, of control. Whoever emerges, or it might be a draw, whoever emerges as a winner, or it might be a draw, basically they get to set the tone of the global destiny, of the collective human destiny, until the next period of war, the next period of conflict. So when I look at claims like this, I don't just accept them in a literal sense. I try to look for the mythic or even what might be considered unthinkable, because there is so much that we in our human form, limited by our human biological brain processing, that we are unable to even imagine. And are you old enough to remember when computers first came on the scene? I'm sad to say that I was. And I remember looking at this big screen that was plonked in front of me, or that I was plonked in front of, and I had no idea at all what was possible. I still don't know all the things that are possible. I read about them, but generally we have to be introduced to what is possible by outsiders. It's outsiders who do that which we think is impossible, who can show us that, hey, expand your thinking, expand your mind. What I'm saying is we have no idea what happens in non-Earth cultures, in various galactic cultures, what is possible. And you have to remember also, or you have to keep in mind, could be a case of remembering for some of you, but you also have to consider that the laws of physics, the laws of chemistry, the physics and reality of different planets, different worlds, different biological beings may be vastly beyond our expectations, our sense of what's possible. Okay, and that kind of really jumbles up, the realities that other beings experience when we try and compare it with our own. So I think what I was trying to say is stop limiting what is claimed. Stop limiting what is claimed through your idea of what's possible. Okay, you have a very, very small net of, it's your own internal matrix, okay, of what you believe. So it's very small. It only lets through the most filtered pieces of information that your mind will grasp onto and extrapolate that to what you consider or how you understand the reality of other beings. When those of us who watch Dante's videos get activated, it's like we're reminded of what is out there, of where home is, and we live a larger life because of that. All right, moving on. Okay, the exchange then moves into discussing the works of various authors. Elena Danaan is one that was mentioned, and she writes about a race that she calls the Alma Huluki, or it might be Alma Huluki Strat 163. I'm not sure. This is an author I have not read. I tend not to read other people's interpretations of. I was really never interested in this whole starseed conversation. That it just never grabbed me to look at, and it was really only through watching the videos of Dante that this actually came home to me. So I have no idea what other authors are writing about. And so the person asks me, that race that I just mentioned, the Alma Huluki, are they the Karistus? Well, frankly, I have no idea. If you're still in the stage of collecting a lot of information, of comparing narratives, it indicates that you're still in the research stage of truth hunting. Okay, so for me, that's no longer an interest that I have. I'm no longer hunting for truth. For me, I have found it, and from the many emails that I get from those who are either on my list or who I interact with on social media, it's true for them as well, that they have found it. They are no longer swaying in their knowledge. And it's a matter of faith. Once you have that faith, once you have that knowing, see, faith is knowing something is true without actually having proof. That's how I would define faith. Knowing like deep into the very cells of your bones that something is true without evidence. Okay? And I have so many reports and feedback of people whose faith is solid in the Karistus, narrative that is shared by Dante. And I'll back up a bit and say, I don't believe exactly everything that Dante says, because as a military leader, you have to remember that sometimes he will only share the tip of the iceberg, the very most tip, or he might even deflect slightly to the left, slightly to the right, for various reasons, whether it's that we're unable to cope with the truth. Don't get me started on the truth. Such a slippery thing. Or that it's not a need to know. Or he's aware that it's not only his people that watch his videos, but also the folk from the other side, the other sides, plural. But in the end, Dante's work leads us to be better people, regardless of what we believe we are. Okay, so whether you consider yourself a walk-in or a starseed or, a misplant, that you're here by accident, that you've been sent to this prison planet and you're innocent, get me out of here. Okay, so no matter what you believe about why you're here, who you are, in the end, it's a matter of our actions in the world and the quality of our relationships with each other. And my path has always been to raise the standard for myself, to raise the standard of the environment that I live in. And I mean, I guess even little micro environments like my living space, and the quality of the people that I surround myself with. Okay, so I believe that is what Dante's work leads people to be, is to raise their standards and to hold higher standards for those that they are around. So just by lifting the vibration that emanates from within themselves, that leads to higher quality actions in the world, okay, it shows people what's possible. We were talking before about you need examples of what's possible, of how things are doable. Okay, and I believe that is the real gift of the Karistus teachings. So people get caught up in the details of the UFOs and the contradictions, particularly the contradictions. And I'm fortunately a person that lives very comfortably with contradictions. People have the free will to mislead, to deceive. And remember, this is a martial race. And for the military, deception, misdirection, and all this is, it's par for the course. It's par for the course. And it's part of human nature as well. I'm thinking it's even the misdirection. It just came to mind that even dogs like to play and deceive and have fun. Anyway, a total non sequitur. Anyway, it's the other races, the ones who seek to exploit and control and destroy humanity, who seed the discontent, who seed the doubts, who focus on self-interest. Okay, so when anybody comes towards me with what I consider petty questions, or almost like how many angels dance on the head of a pin type questions that there are no real answers to, only sort of like philosophical or ethical discussions are possible. But when those questions are raised, I look at the motivation of the one who is asking. Are they really seeking to know, or are they upsetting the apple cart? Is that their intention? Okay, are they just doing mischief, or are they seeking? And I know there are so many who just seek to make mischief, and they use the details to do so. Okay, and then this for me is such a juicy topic. I'm almost drooling in my delight. Anyway, the conversation then goes towards 𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿. And for those of you who don't know who 𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿 is, he was a follower of Dante. My understanding is that he was brought into the inner circle and there was a fallout, and so now 𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿 is at the sharp end of Dante's displeasure. But nonetheless, 𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿 continues with his own journey, which is laudable. He hasn't let Dante's disapproval silence him. So 𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿 makes some videos of his own. And anybody who's curious about the Karistus will inevitably do some searching online for them, and so 𝚿𝚿𝚿's work might come up on their radar. Anyway, the person asks, 𝚿𝚿𝚿 claims to be a king of Karistus or Jupiter. What is my take on this? And basically my take is that it's unprovable. Whatever 𝚿𝚿𝚿 writes about or speaks about is unprovable. It will be a matter of faith, whether it resonates with you or not. I'm not saying it's untrue. I'm not saying it's true. I don't know. My approach is to accept things on face value without judgment. So I just note it. And I build on that observation with how they continue to reveal themselves and what they continue to reveal, with what are their fruits that they offer, and what is the intention of those offerings. And as far as I've been able to discern, 𝚿𝚿𝚿 is simply sharing his introspections. You see, most of us have been programmed to only trust authority of others, that we can learn through teachings. So there has to be a teacher who has knowledge that we don't. Okay. And those teachers can be face-to-face, they can be videoed, they can be in books. Okay. So most of us only allow ourselves, maybe I should say most of you only allow yourselves to learn from another. Now, what 𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿 does, and what many spiritual people do, they learn from themselves by I want to call it meditations, but that wouldn't be quite correct. So it's like introspection, and it's almost like, look, you can combine this whole remote viewing, lucid dreaming, astral traveling. So that's a whole, how do I explain it? An experiential direction that many of you won't utilize, where you learn for yourselves what's out there. And because we have been programmed to diminish or dismiss that which originates within ourselves as fantasy, as unreliable, daydreaming. Okay, we dismiss the relevance of that reality. We dismiss its importance. We dismiss its impact. But 𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿 doesn't. He processes his encounters, his experiences, and then whatever he does in between, he then presents in snippets. And these, I've found some of these to be quite revelatory, quite of a different order than what I've encountered before. It's almost like there's a metaphysics of gods. So I have no idea what the point of contention is between 𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿 and Dante. It's not a need to know for me, but I've come to respect what 𝚿𝚿𝚿 has created. And I notice at this particular point in time, his teachings are offline as well. So I don't know what's going on there, but it's interesting. It's just interesting. The conversation then turns to the goddess. And the person writes that I mentioned the goddess. That would be Ishtar, correct? And they mention also how Swaru presented herself as the daughter of Ishtar and Dumuzi, who would then be a granddaughter, who would then be a granddaughter of Enki. Okay. All right. Let's focus first on the goddess. Now, for those of you who are mythically inclined, there are many goddesses. There are a race of gods, and this is one of the things that I have come to know as an article of faith, that that you can be instructed, that you can be developed into God, not only God consciousness, but God as in world building. Okay, and I'd really like to go deeper into that in a future video. But getting back to the misunderstandings about the Karistus and the goddess and Ishtar. All right, because we're running out of time, more correctly, because I've gone on long enough and you're probably getting bored, I want to just speed through some of the next sections. Okay, the goddess is not Ishtar. Dante has never mentioned Ishtar being of the goddess race. Okay, so, but she certainly holds Ishtar certainly holds the position of goddess in many earthly religions and practices. But the goddess that, when Dante talks about the goddess, he is talking about the equivalent who has come to us biblically as Mary, Mother of God. And the goddess's name that he uses, and I'm sure she has many names, is Mariel. Mariel. She's the one who's mythologized in Christianity as Mary, Mother of God. But then Ishtar is also another strong feminine archetype, and she's the one mythologized in Christianity as Mary Magdalene. And as far as Swaru's claim, I have no deep knowledge of the Taygetan narrative. I have no idea of who's who they used to be, who they're connected to. Okay, I'm just too busy with my own mission to get sidetracked. So I can't comment. But the gods are a group who are as real as the Taygetans, the Karistus, the Anunnaki, etc. And I'm not sure what the birth requirements would be to be a god, whether it's a level of attainment, perhaps like, the equivalent of getting like a PhD cosmically, or whether this attainment is based on spiritual development or on skills training or whatever. And regarding what other people say about the Karistus, really it doesn't concern me or even interest me. I don't have time for characters who will only comment without any sort of real education. So I've read the transcript that was mentioned, and it's there on the Swaru site. Just do a search for Karistus and see what comes up in their transcripts. But when I've read over it, it just feels like such a simplified snapshot of a vast and complex reality. And it's like when, Germans talk about the English or the Chinese talk about the Japanese, there will be distortions in the narrative based on the, based on history, based on their education, based on political agendas. So you will never get a true reflection of a people from anyone who's commenting outside that group of people. So it's like, it's hard enough to even navigate, the truth between two cultural groups here on this planet. Even with a short time span, say a couple of centuries, let alone attempting to navigate the truth between two galactic groups over millennia upon millennia. So, and I've noticed that there are quite a number of people in the Taygetan forum, or their group, who consider whatever comes from that source, Gosia, Swaru, whoever, to be infallible. And this makes for such a dangerous fundamentalism mindset, and can be very almost aggressive in and just that whole attack vibe on anyone who dissents is such a red flag for me that, stay away. This is not healthy. And then it goes on to, the narrative of Dante and Ishtar, or Azazel and Ishtar, and just this person's attempts to reconcile all the details that they've come across. Let me warn you now, don't play that game. Don't play that game. It's one that's going to drive your rational mind bonkers. It'll twist it, turn it. Okay, this is a mythic, poetic. Now, when I have to explain the word mythic, it doesn't mean it's not real. It just means that it's of an order beyond our framework of understanding. That's what I mean by mythic, that it is the world of gods, angels, fae, nymphs, satyrs, centaurs, pazuzus. There's beings. What is it that there's more in all of heaven and earth than in your imaginings. Terrible, terrible paraphrase there, but you get the idea. So to try and bring to reconcile all the various narratives, it's going to drive you crazy. Just don't go there. People can claim all kinds of things, and you have no idea what their intention for these claims is, whether it's to make mischief, whether it's to puff up their own pride, whether it is a fractal reality that we have no idea about. But you, in your humanity, no, that's not the right flavor. You, in your human design, are not geared to navigating those level truths and to put it together in a jigsaw puzzle type manner that makes rational sense. Okay, now I want to just do a little jump to the left and talk about when I speak about the limitations of your human design. It is possible to transcend that. But exactly like Jamael does, you have to believe that your own experiences, your own astral experiences, your own inner experiences are as true and as valid as those of authorities, of the authorities that you trust. Okay, now, even authorities have agendas. Every authority has their agenda to frame their knowledge in particular ways, what they intend for you, or how they intend for you to frame what they are sharing with you. And so it is with your own inner experience. You have to learn how to sort the wheat from the chaff. Okay, now many people have no discernment, no process of discernment for sorting their inner wheat from the chaff. One of the big ways to do that, one of the best ways to do that, is to do your own shadow work. Shadow work basically is learning about your own demons, learning about your own vulnerabilities, learning about your own pain, learning about how you're programmed, and respecting yourself anyway. Okay, now it's not only a matter of learning about them, but how to, and I'm looking for words, and I don't want, okay, back up. Don't accept them. Don't accept your pain. Don't use your weaknesses, your vulnerabilities, your programming as an excuse. Okay, note them as that is the terrain of your human design. Most people are a hot mess of emotional wounds and of social programming. Okay, it's a landscape. It's a landscape. You have your own particular landscape of emotional wounds and social programming. Learn the landscape so that you can navigate through it. Now, like any new landscape that you come across, okay, it's almost like, all right, this is I am mixing so many metaphors here. It is like you're dealt a hand of cards. Okay, and that's it, and you've got to deal with it. It's like, all right, you have been given a terrain, a psychic terrain in which your soul was planted, and that's it. And then there's nothing you can do about it, and that can include, like, the family that you were born into and the dynamics within that family. That might have been helpful, it might have been harmful. It might be the physical body that you're born into. That has certain limitations. I mean, gosh, I wish I was taller than 5'2" a lot of times. And so you might have physical restrictions set by your DNA. There are certain things that are given that you kind of just have to deal with and navigate through. But the way that you respond, and this is nothing new to so many of you, the way you relate to those givens, that determines so much of the emotional weight of your life. It determines so much whether your life is full of resistance, because that resistance starts with you, or whether life flows. Okay, so it's your relationship with those givens in your psychic terrain, in your human life emotional terrain. See, languaging is so challenging to communicate these higher ideas. Every group is going to have infiltrators. I just realized that the word infiltrators has the word traitors embedded within it. Interesting. Okay, so the person who's corresponding with me mentions about some of the details that this infiltrator has brought out from Dante's videos. And there's mention about trafficking, human and child trafficking, and the mafia. Yes, the Karistus are involved in the mafia. There, I've said it. Remember, I also said that sometimes you have to do bad things in order to prevent worse things. There is dirty work that the good guys, and I'm talking very broadly here, the good guys, the ones we expect to be good guys, like, our politicians, our corporate leaders, things have to be done. Is that the right way to say it? No. There are operations in progress always to undermine humanity. Remember, this is what those who the Karistus are fighting against. They're always seeking to undermine through often subversive and hidden means. And to fight them or to push back, sometimes you have to fight at that level, through the subversive and through the often violent processes. The bad guys are not going to play by gentlemen's rules. Let me just say that if the good guys are expected by the public to never get their hands dirty, they are in for an incredibly rude shock. Every military force in the world has its special operations that do the underhanded and unofficial dirty work. And the Karistus are no different. They have torture vans. They use threats. They use punishment. Now let me say, not against innocents. Those who are innocent, those who haven't offended, those who haven't caused any harm to anyone. But for those, the word or the phrase, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. Okay, well, who do you reckon is going to impose that vengeance? Okay, the Karistus are a very harsh, firm race. They're not all lovey-dovey. They're not all, sweet guardian angel type characters. No, they are the vengeance warriors of righteousness. And they will take that to the physical level here. Okay, if you're not comfortable with that, if you expect the race that has been identified as angels, if you expect them to be always clean-handed, okay, you're in the wrong place. You have to have a very realistic, and I would say to you, if that's what you think, you're probably a female who's quite removed from the real world. Yes, the Karistus are a very masculine-based race. It doesn't mean they're disrespectful to the feminine. It means that they protect and value the feminine to the best of their capacity. Okay, so the mafia, yes, we've covered that. It's retribution rather than malice. Okay, that's what these darker aspects of the Karistus are used for retribution, for righteous vengeance against the higher order, against transgressions that are against the higher order. They go into further details that this infiltrator has brought back to this 𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿 forum. A bit of comment about Arsinoe, who was Cleopatra's sister, or Cleopatra, for those who have watched the videos. And Arsinoe being Mary Magdalene, and someone who claimed that they were Joan of Arc. So, look, I have no idea about all these little flecks of, revelations that people make or claim. I have no idea to how to knit it together into any cohesive narrative, and nobody will. Nobody can. And the person then goes on to reveal kind of what I consider a bit of a quixotic task, that they're trying to persuade or correct the misassumptions that people in this person's group have about the Karistus. Just don't. When people in a fundamentalist mindset have their ideas, a lone voice fighting to change their minds is an unwinnable task. Those people have chosen their field to be, locked into, and they have the free will to do that. Okay, my thinking is that, okay, here we've got an individual who's trying to be a lone voice to sway a group of other individuals. Don't do it in their playground. Don't do it in their territory. If you have something to say to counteract what this group or any group, what they believe, stand on a hill, stand on a soapbox away from that group. Okay, build your own body of narrative, build your side of the dialogue from your soapbox. Don't do it within their territory. You'll either be seen as a traitor, you'll be ostracized, you'll be attacked. Okay, step out of it. Step out of it. Create your own little territory. Put up a little soapbox and speak from there. Which is basically how I'm doing it. Okay, I'm not out to get a whole lot of splashy numbers. That's irrelevant. What is relevant for me is that I build a little territory where I can speak my truth without constantly putting out fires of attack, of having my character assassinated. And so that's what I would recommend to any of you who find yourself embedded with a group of people and you're trying to correct them. Just don't. And I'm also not going to comment on how these other groups organize themselves. It's not my business. And it provides a destination for people who want to go on that particular journey. And it also provides a very useful counterpoint. Okay, when we develop our faith, as we develop our faith, it becomes refined. So other groups can often provide very useful points that we can push back against. And by that pushing back, we clarify for ourselves what it is that we do know, what we do understand, what we do believe in. So it's very useful in that sense as well. in theological studies, there's a process of discovery that is termed apophatic, apophatic. And what that means is that you remove from an idea, if you're trying to get to the heart of something, you remove from your head everything that idea is not. So for often people use the apophatic process to describe what God is by clarifying what God is not. Okay, and the idea is that, once you've removed everything that God is not, then the only thing that is left is what God actually is. Okay, so this process can work to clarify any number of, I don't want to call them spiritual thoughts or cosmic thoughts, but just non-human, not even non-human, because a lot of humans, particularly those that live closer to their natural states. So for, culture and civilization, while it comes having many gifts and many treasures, there is also a lot of compromise that has been made along the way. And the soul is one of the soul is one of those things that have been compromised. But the Karistus, they waken that up. They waken it up again hugely. And the person then continues to write that they admit they haven't watched many of Dante's videos, and what they have seen, is it's like not a dream so much, but okay, let me just read what they've written here. It's quite hard to catch up as his YouTube accounts frequently change and the videos he posts are there for a short time. So it's really hard to navigate when you only scratch the surface like I do. That all on the background of not good vibes I'm getting from him based on bad mouthing. I've heard about him from others, as I've earlier explained. I've also heard him say, I killed my father Lucifer, or I watched my children being barbecued. You see, it's a difficult person, and considering he links himself with Karistus, this is Dante, I have serious doubts about their intentions either. I even test hypotheses that this Karistus account could all be made up to fit a given agenda, like many secret cults and societies are built on a lie, right? Okay, well, yes. For a newcomer, all of us had this experience. But it's like, okay, if you are a newcomer, you are a lot more vulnerable than people who have watched his videos for a long time or who have watched a number of his videos. I know that personally over 4 years now, that was when I came in. Fortunately, a lot of his earlier videos were still able to be viewed. So while I haven't been a follower of Dante for so many years, I have been fortunate enough to watch a sizable, not all, definitely not all, but a sizable selection of his videos. But what I've noticed is that knowledge is imparted feather by feather, layer by layer, not sequentially like you would expect if you enrolled in a school or a course. But this is a very softly, first one direction, then another direction, and then three layers above the first direction, and then go underneath. It's like all over the place. But gently, over time or overexposure to his various videos, you build up. And it's almost like, it's not that layers are put down, but that cells are woken up. One cell here, one cell there, one cell over there, one cell in the soul, one cell in the body. It's like gently, it's imperceptible until you get to a place where you realize that you have faith. and you don't know exactly what triggered it, how it was instilled. So how do you explain that process to someone who is trying to make sense of the details? You know, like when he says that, yes, we have torture vans, yes, we're involved in the mafia, yes, I killed my father Lucifer, or, okay. This is what I mean. It's about moving your consciousness into the mythic realms where life is very different to how we have been programmed to believe it is here for us, and we expect everyone else to conform to that same understanding. You can hear my voice is getting a bit thin. I'm just going to take a pause. All right. See how this next section goes. Okay. Little bit of a conversation turn back again to 𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿, and basically they say that they don't trust him because he's using his own experience, his own based on his astral travels, and how this person writes that they don't for themselves to believe 𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿𝚿, they need evidence. They need a testimony, for instance. Look, if you're looking for proof, forget it. Okay, if the only way that you will believe something is through evidence, well, what evidence will be enough for you? If you don't trust yourself, okay. Your heart is your compass to truth. You know when a piece of information is imparted by how it hits you, either positively or negatively, how it hits you. It's almost like as simple as a yes, no. Okay, for me, I experience it as a push-pull. And that's how I make my decisions, that I go towards something that pulls me forward, and I back away from something that pushes me, literally, in the solar plexus. Okay, I mentioned the heart before. Whether it's the heart chakra, if that's how you want to define it, or the solar plexus chakra, but those are your soul chakras, okay? The heart chakra is the mediator between the head and the survival chakras, or the spiritual and the survival of the body. But that is the compass of your truth, okay? That you know. And you don't need evidence. It's, as I said, it's a matter of faith. You know something is true without evidence. And if you're asking for evidence, then you're still in the research stage, okay? And being in the research stage, you're still also vulnerable to your own dirty filters. And those dirty filters can only be cleansed with your own shadow work, okay? So yes, most people are a hot mess of their own emotional wounds, of social programming, and their dirty filters. And the shadow work helps you become aware of all of these factors and gives you a starting point to begin to lift yourself out of an imprisoned life. You don't need somebody to grant you freedom. You do that by yourself, by working on your hot mess. And don't be angry. When you're working on your hot mess, don't be angry on those who you blame to have caused this hot mess in the first place. No, it's just part of the adventure of life. It's your quest. Every hero has to navigate through a messy landscape of treachery and traps. You're no different. You're no different. And if you think that you want to have a life of no traps, of no treachery, well, good luck to you. I would consider that boring as hell. For me, that would be hell. Give me a few demons and adventures to fight against. Then we just continue into a few exchanges of what has already been discussed. And you'll notice that with such people, there is never a conclusion to the discussion. Okay, it's a quixotic quest. It's unwinnable. So save your energy and create your own territory where you speak the truths that you, as you see them. Okay, and that may vary over time as you learn and discover more, as your faith develops, as it increases. But don't fight in their territory. Don't fight battles that they've initiated. So I'll read a bit of the reply that I finished this particular exchange with. The details don't matter one bit. Who Ishtar is, who is part of the Federation, the Galactic Federation, whether Jamael is a creep, whether Dante is trustworthy. In the end, it matters only which side of this spiritual war you side with and how you support that side. I choose to stand with the Karistus, to fight for good, to fight for humanity, to fight for freedom, to fight for my eternal flame, to shine bright. Details are so petty and inconsequential next to this. They are amusements for small bureaucratic minds that enjoy flaunting their lack of knowledge. Wannabe academics who are trapped in their flawed indoctrinations, perpetuating and pontificating their corrupted opinions. It's laughably pathetic to observe humans at their meanest, nitpickingest, while masquerading as high and mighty. So there's a quote in Matthew 7:6 that says it best: "Give not that which is holy unto dogs, neither cast you pearls before swine, lest they trample them under their feet and turn again and rend you." So that is so relevant for you who would defend the Karistus against their naysayers. Okay, so, and what is important is the caliber of your soul and the courage of your actions. I would strongly say that neither Dante nor the Karistus will ever be understood by those who haven't watched many hours of his videos. Except, of course, by those who have direct experience. Often the Karistus will metaphorically tap somebody on the shoulder and bring them in. Okay, so this is how they've been recruiting way before videos were available. Remember, they've been here millennia upon millennia. So it's the difference between experiential knowing and theoretical knowing. Theoretical knowing is a pale imitation of living knowing, like trying to learn to ski from a textbook. Most experts are simply theoretical knowers and not worth listening to for somebody who's really ready to learn to ski. Build your moral compass. Live each day, each breath as your higher self. Allow no room in your heart for self-deception or excuses. Be useful to those who fight for freedom. Don't get in their way. Don't make their job harder. They don't want worship, but they certainly value appreciation. They are kindred, colleagues. Raise yourself to their level. Don't bring them down just because you don't understand them or can't figure things out. What you think of the various characters is none of my concern. This is between you and your eternity. I've made my peace between my layers of self. You're on the way there, so keep at it. But don't listen to those who clearly have no inner peace. And you can tell that through their words, what they produce, how they relate to others. That way, you're just wasting your time looking for pearls in the mud, and there's far easier places to go looking for those. And while the videos are unavailable, while they're down, you can just help the Karistus by raising your moral caliber and investing in your critical thinking capacity. This isn't a personal attack upon you. It's just saying that there's a general lack of education in critical thinking these days. And that's just how the overlords, the ones that want to control and exploit and destroy humanity, that's just how they like it. No critical thinking.